Now it's time to move to our machine. So I want to go through the tools that you will use for the invisible machine applique. So the first thing is an open toe applique. You need to have that opening in the foot so you can really clearly see where you're stitching. So buy yourself an open toe applique. The needle that I like to use is a Microtex size 60. The Microtex size 60 is going to be a very, very sharp point, and it is the smallest needle that you can use in your regular machine. Now, the only thread that I know of that works well with the Microtex 60 is an invisible thread. Now, invisible threads have been around for a long time. I think when I first started quilting, it was fishing line. It was really, really thick. It didn't work at all in the machine. It was kind of a disaster. But probably the last 10, 15 years, I would think pretty much all of the invisible threads on the market are going to be really good. They're all going to be 0.004 in size, which is about the size of a hair. This particular brand is from YLI, and you'll see that it's actually on a cone. I'm going to show you how to set up with the cone, but know that there is another brand from Sulky. Sulky's invisible thread is a polyester thread. It actually is on a regular skinny spool, which means you actually can use it in your sewing machine laying horizontal. So if your machine can go vertical where the spool is like this, or if you use a thread holder, the cone is actually way more affordable. But if you don't have a thread holder and your machine can only hold the spool of thread horizontally, then you really need to pick up the Sulky invisible thread because it's a really good one that's on a spool. Now we're going to go to the machine. Oh, before we go to the machine, I want to give you a real clear look at what the stitch looks like. There's a lot of teachers that use the blind hem stitch on the machine. Now your blind hem stitch goes stitch, 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 zigzag. Stitch, 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 zigzag. That works really great, I think, for making a blind hem on a garment. I don't think it works very well for this technique. When you're doing the stitch, 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 the stitch has to be so tiny and you only get one zigzag to catch the edge of the fabric. So my preferred stitch is a very small zigzag. So here on the fabric, on the dark fabric, you can see with the light colored thread, that's the size of stitch. I wish I could tell you that on every machine it was set up 1.0 and 1.5, but I can't. Every machine is different. So you need to set up your machine so that you have a stitch length about this big. And really, it's about 1/8 of an inch from point to point. And if you do hand applique, you know that your hand applique stitch is about 1/8 of an inch. So it really works great. I also, to set my machine up, I'll set up the tension. I'll actually lower my top tension 2 or 3 bops. I want my top thread to come all the way down. I don't want the bobbin thread to peak to the top. So we're going to move to our machine now. I'm going to put my open toe foot on. All right. Now over here, I have the cone thread set up. The cone thread is here. This is a really fancy thread holder that a friend loaned me. This is really pretty. I highly recommend you get a pretty thread holder. But if not, there actually is other ones that aren't quite as pretty. But what's important with a thread holder is that it be heavy. There's some on the market that are just made of cheap plastic, and the minute your machine starts, the thread holder is going to tip. So get yourself one that at least has a heavy metal base. I've got my invisible thread in there. I've got my 60 Microtex needle and my open toe applique foot. I'm ready to do the stitch. When you're doing the stitch, the perfect stitch is that the needle will zig on and zag off. You don't want the stitches to be on the piece that you're actually appliquing down. You need it to zig on to the leaf, then off to the background fabric, on to the leaf, and off to the background. That's what really makes it invisible. If your zigzag stitch stays on the edge of the leaf, all it does is flatten it. So by making it zig on and zag off, you're going to get a really fabulous stitch that, unless you know any better, you're probably not going to know that it was done by machine. So I'm going to start here on this little stem, and I'm going to take it down. Oh, I forgot to mention, this is a really important time to have your acrylic table. With this extension table, my piece is going to be able to spin around. I'm going to be very easy to just move my piece around and be able to have it do all the curves that I need it to do. If I don't have this acrylic table, then my piece is flopping off the edge of the machine. So now's the time, get your acrylic table. Trust me, we will use the acrylic table all the time. You will never regret that you bought one. Now I'm ready to stitch. So I'm zigging on, zagging off, zigging on, zagging off. Just like when we were sewing around the pieces, you want to always be sure that when you're moving the fabric, you stop with your needle in the down position, lift your presser foot. Then when you start, you put it down. So I'm zigging on, zagging off, stop with the needle down, turn. And honestly, whoa, that went a little fast. I usually go pretty slow. So I'm not going to be rushing through it as I go. Going to get here to where I'm going to turn, stop with my needle in the down, spin my piece, and catch the edge. Now I'm zigging on, off, on, off. You will get yourself into a rhythm, which really is the main reason that I like using the zigzag as opposed to the blind hem stitch. With the blind hem stitch, the stitch, 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 zigzag, stitch, 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 zigzag. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just me, but every time the zig is zagging and the zag is, I'm missing my fabric. Then it's a whole 1/4 of an inch till I get another chance for the zig to zag onto the fabric and then off the fabric. With the zigzag, if I happen to miss one, that's only one little stitch. The next stitch is going to be really quite a bit close to it. I'm not going to have to worry that it's gone off too far and I don't have enough stitch down. And I get to my end, going to do a little backing up, and then cut the thread off. But I want to reemphasize again how important having the acrylic table is. Can you imagine without the acrylic table, let's just move it out of the way, your piece is going to be flopping over your machine. You're not going to be able to move it very smoothly. So if you're going to try machine applique, get yourself an acrylic table. The next step is actually to square up the block after all of your applique is done. Thanks for watching our video. Be sure you subscribe to our channel. We wouldn't want you to miss a single one. Leave a comment. We would love to hear from you.